I'm Jay Solomon,
And I'm Hagar Shamali.
and welcome to the Threat Podcast. Every week, we'll analyze and discuss the most pressing, yet not always so visible, threats to global security and the movements and ideologies that fuel extremism and terrorism.
We'll take listeners to the front lines of these battles, both at home and abroad, and we'll talk with the key players in law enforcement, intelligence, diplomacy, and academia who are working to counter these threats. Welcome to the Threat Podcast. I'm Hagar Shamali.
And I'm Jay Solomon.
Today we're going to discuss the threats posed by Hezbollah, which is a terrorist group and Iranian proxy based in Lebanon. And I am personally so excited to welcome a good friend of both Jay's and mine, Hanin Ghaddar. Hanin Ghaddar is the Friedmann Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Her work primarily addresses Shia politics throughout the Levant, and she works closely on Hezbollah. She is the author of the book Hezbollahland, Mapping Dahiya and Lebanon's Shia Community, which explores the intricacies of Lebanon's Shia community. And before arriving at the Washington Institute, Hanin had a long history as a journalist based in Beirut. What Hanin's bio does not reveal, however, is that she herself is a Shia Lebanese woman from the South of Lebanon. And because of her work to expose Hezbollah's nefarious behavior and criminal activity, Lebanon's military court, which is influenced and controlled by Hezbollah, sentenced her in absentia. But they were then forced to drop the sentence due to U.S. pressure, so her case is now sitting somewhere in a civil court. And so she has a unique and intimate understanding of this terror organization and the threats it poses, both within Lebanon and globally. Hanin, we are so excited to have you here. Before we dive in, why don't you give us a little bit of background and tell us a bit about how you fell into this work? You yourself are a Shia Lebanese woman who grew up in the South. How did your views of Hezbollah change over the course of your time? And what caused those changes, if any? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Hagar. It's so good to be here among friends. Jay, so good to see you both. And thank you very much for having me. And thanks for the great introduction. I would have done it myself. What I do, actually, that's exactly why I don't consider this just like a job. It's not like a 9-to-5 job for me. I carry it through my evenings and weekends because it's also a passion for me. And my understanding of Hezbollah and Lebanon is both professional and personal, which usually helped me also with accessing the community, accessing Lebanon, but also understanding the dynamics that usually people do not. So I was born in South of Lebanon, in a Shia town called Al-Ghaziyeh. And I have studied in Saida between the evangelical school, and then I went to Hariri High School. I ended up in Beirut at the American University of Beirut. What got me here is actually I've always been interested in writing. Even as a kid, like my favorite subject was literature. So for me, it was interesting, but I was more interested in research and literature and writing, etc. So when I went to college, I thought I was going to do English literature because this is what I wanted. But then college changed me and made me realize that I want to do actually not literature per se, but actual research and politics. And then I went into journalism. And journalism, also, I moved from all sorts of journalism, started with As-Safir, which was like a pro-Hezbollah. I couldn't last. I moved on to, working in Nahar, Hayat for a little bit, and then now Lebanon, which was like my home for 10 years before I came to the U.S. And honestly, Hezbollah, the other question, Hezbollah, I never liked them. I was... in 82, when they really started to surface, I was 8 years old. It was scary for a little girl to see this darkness. The south of Lebanon was full of color, was full of dancing and weddings and people really like even, older women who wore the hijab, they wore it in a different way. Half they had colorful stuff, skirts not to the ground. The whole culture, the Iranian culture that came with Hezbollah actually scared me. And it didn't really land well in my psyche as a young girl who was exposed through my mom's family to all sorts of books and literature and poetry and music, and something felt wrong from the very very beginning. I never liked them. A lot of people thought that they were the resistance. They didn't like them ideologically. They didn't believe in their ideology, but they also the whole resistance narrative worked for many people, especially those who believed in the leftist resistance, الجبهة الوطنية لتحرير مش الجبهة الوطنية لتحرير فلسطين جمول الجبهة اللبنانية. So للمقاومة. So this basically the Lebanese leftist resistance all believed in Hezbollah because look at them, they're so capable, they're so efficient. We have to let them do the job. And they did actually, anyway, made people believe that they are liberating the land. And to a certain extent, they might have, until we realized that it's not about liberating the land. But that gave a lot of people, some kind of fond feeling towards, Hezbollah. And they were presenting themselves as clean, the only party that is not corrupt, the only party that is actually doing the job, the only party that is giving to the people, not taking from them in terms of social services, etc. So many people fell into this trap, even if they actually were not ideologically or, Shia or even Iranian.
Wait, as a kid though, are you pressured into
No.
supporting them in high school? Like
No.
you didn't feel a black sheep?
No, I didn't go to a high school in the town. I went to Saida, to a school, to Hariri High School, and I went to before to evangelical high school. So at Saida, it was a diverse, very diverse situation where you really see everything and everyone. When Hezbollah arrived, and I was really part of a more diverse community, even my mom's family, they were exposed. They studied in Saida, in Beirut, American University, San Joseph. It was a diverse family in that sense. None of them was really like a Hezbollah affiliate or member. They weren't really part of this. So I was not pressured. Of course, there's the general pressure, you have to support them, you have to love them, but you don't really have to express their ideology, or no one came to me and said, here's a veil, you have to wear it. So I was not pressured in that sense. However, when I started expressing my opinion about them later, after college, when I started really talking about how I hate them, because I started going into journalism and I started writing and I started expressing myself, that became a problem, not because my family thought just it was a problem, because Hezbollah started pressuring the family to tell me how problematic it is. Because this young Shia girl is really going outside this cocoon of everybody loves Hezbollah, and I was like, no, not really. So I never liked them. What I saw in them is a lot of darkness, literal darkness. They brought a lot of black to my town. Everybody is suddenly wearing black. Ashura, the Shia commemoration of, Karbala al-Hussein, was a very, mild occasion. People ate sweets, read some stuff, and really, it's an occasion to, think and remember. And suddenly it became a 40 days of the IRGC and the Wilayat al-Faqih ideology imposed into the people by comparing Hezbollah to Imam al-Hussein. And I was like, what? So the whole thing didn't make sense to me. I never really, and the whole thing of, wearing the veil and the abaye and women actually going back into the background of supporting the men and having to wear the hijab and do the women job. For Hezbollah, it's very clear, women does not do men's jobs. So it's this equality that although I lived in the South of Lebanon, and although I lived in a town, for me, and this came from my mom's family actually, that no, women are not supposed to be that. All my aunts went to college. A lot of them got a master's degree. It's an educated family that did not really believe in that kind of positioning for women. So from my very, very young age, I was against that.
Could you take us back to the history of Hezbollah, how it was founded, the connections to the Iranian regime? I think when it was originally formed, it was kind of a bit more murky, even though there were these stories of, IRGC commanders in the Bekaa training, but bring the listener to, the beginnings of Hezbollah and Iran's role in it.
So Hezbollah started as small cells in the south and in the Bekaa, mostly in the south. And it was really a creation of three different people. That is the IRGC, who came to Lebanon, but they didn't know
Revolutionary Guard Corps.
The Revolutionary Guard Corps, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they didn't know anyone. So their opening, the people who actually opened the ground for them was the Palestinians, Yasser Arafat and the PLO. They are the ones who trained them, who opened the doors for them, and eventually they inherited them. And the third is Amal movement. A lot of people from Amal formed this middle thing called Islamic Amal, which became Hezbollah. So it's really kind of a monster that was created by three different forces. Each came with their own axis and with their own capabilities. And the Iranians, of course, came with a lot of money and ideology. The Palestinians came in with a lot of military capabilities in terms of ability to train and make an army ready. And the Islamic Amal, which came from Amal, Musa Sadr Amal, became more Islamic and ideological, and it had access to the Shia dynamics. And that's exactly how it worked. And of course, this all melted inside the new entity that they called Hezbollah, but it's really a combination of these three elements.
And, and after a while, Hezbollah became a political party, right, in Lebanon. And with elected and appointed political officials, it began providing social services to the south, schools, hospitals. It employs individuals and so on. Talk to us a little bit about that approach and how integral it is to Hezbollah's growth, and how much of a problem is, if you're looking at Hezbollah as a threat, how problematic is it that they have this side to them as well?
Well, they started the social services way before they entered the parliament and the government. They started with a pillar, and I talked about this in my book Hezbollahland, how this happened, how they really mobilized the community. So I talk about this in details, and I explain, like the history of it. But we have to remember that they understood from the very beginning that they cannot really come to the Shia community and say, we are an Iranian arm, you have to follow us. That was not going to work. So they crafted their lobbying powers, if you want, the pillars of power within the Shia community, in order to cater for different groups, to make sure that they can bring in people who need the services. Because remember, back then it was the middle of the war. The Shia were had no access to services. The government was actually in the middle of the war. All of Lebanon was really not. They say the Shia were deprived. I think a lot of Lebanese were deprived back then during the war. I think the peripheries were deprived, and the Shia are part of the peripheries. So yes, they didn't have access to services. They didn't have access to anything, and the war was going on. And so basically, they came to the Shia community with three pillars of power, and they said, we are your government. We are here to give you whatever you want. We will give you schools, medical services, education, anything you need, all the essentials that you need and you can have no access to. And there were a lot of poor people in the Shia community. And also, we will give you a liberation. We will make sure that the South is liberated. We will make sure that Israelis will not occupy the South at all. And then they proved to them that they can actually do that. But the money immediately came in. The money for social services immediately came in. And the third pillar is the Shia identity, the empowerment of the Shia identity, which was very subtly but very nicely for them. It was a good job, actually. They linked the Shia identity, the empowerment of the Shia, to the Wilayat al-Faqih. So everything that came with the Shia identity, it was linked immediately in the narrative to Wilayat al-Faqih. Wilayat al-Faqih, it's an ideology that basically with the Iranian revolution in 82, when Iran, this current, regime in Iran came in, and Khamenei, before Khamenei, there was Khomeini. Khomeini, he was the one who started this thing with the revolution, Islamic revolution, that relied on the idea on wilayat al-faqih, which means that he himself, what do you call him, the Murshid al-A'la, the ultimate imam of the Shia. Exactly. He is Wali al-Faqih, so he is the representative of God on earth for the Shia. So this is something that the Shia have never heard of. This is something that is usually frowned upon by the Shia community. No one represents God on earth. No one has ever represented God on earth. The whole idea is that the Shia wait for the emergence of the Imam al-Mahdi, and he leads basically the Shia to the good days. So the Shia identity started to change into an Iranian narrative, and that's how they turned the Shia community into an IRGC community. But apparently now the Iranians come with a very different idea, the Wilayat al-Faqih, which is very Iranian. The whole idea behind it is not just about the representative himself, but about creating a strong link and allegiance between the Shia communities in the region, starting with Lebanon, to Iran. Because Iran just wanted to own the Shia, and the only way for them to own the Shia is to make them believe in the Iranian ideology of Shiism, and that's how they really worked on this.
Did people in the South find this weird though? You've got
at the beginning, yes. At the beginning,
they're not Arabs.
Everybody thought it was weird.
Yeah.
People did not really buy it at the beginning. Hezbollah was not that popular. Their peak really was in 2000 with the liberation of the South, and I do like quote unquote very consciously. This was their peak. This is where everybody was like for them. But I think also when they came and they said, they didn't say Wilayat al-Faqih right away. They talked about Wilayat al-Faqih as part of the narrative, but they didn't force it on the people because they realized that the people are not ready for it. They were very subtle. They came with a lot of services. They came with whatever you need, we're here for you. Anything you need, we're here for you. Money, jobs, services. Someone needs money, they give them money without vetting anything. There was like so much money. And they really bought a lot of people by these services, bought allegiances by these services. They came in with the liberation, although there was like some kind of a resistance before them, the national leftist resistance before them, which was, like doing what they can, obviously, but they weren't as efficient. So when they came with their whole resistance capabilities and plans, and don't forget that they actually came in with a very clear suicide bombers, and this really what made them more efficient, because the national resistance before them did not really believe in al-intihari. They believed in the fidai, which is very different than an intihari. Fidai is that I fight, if I die while fighting, it's fine. The intihari that Hezbollah introduced is actually like the ISIS kind of very, Islamic type, is that my goal is to die for this. So there's a huge difference. And for the Lebanese, that was a little bit too much. But then they realized actually there are people killing themselves to liberate the land. And that made the Shia feel, like grateful. They saw a lot of people fight before, but they didn't see that kind of dedication, that people are actually killing themselves. So that kind of changed introduced the whole idea of shaheed, the sacred shaheed, because the shaheed is no longer just someone who dies in battle. It's now sacred because he's giving his life for the cause. And the idea of the sacredness of the shaheed carried a lot of ideological weight with it. And this also was the other pillar, and it's all linked to the empowerment of the Shia community, and that's how they gradually started to go into the parliament and then government, and bringing in the Shia narrative of we are strong, we are here. and the Shia felt empowered. So it worked. It worked for a very long time. It cost them a lot. The budget was equally divided at one point between the military and the services. And then it had to shift when Iran decided to for the Quds force which is the regional arm of the IRGC. At one point, it was led by Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in Iraq in 2020. So after that, Hezbollah became the Quds force, and the first really crossroad for their money shifts, budget shifts, is when they went to Syria, because they no longer became a Lebanese-focused group. They also had a lot of expenditure in Syria, and the Yemen was also happening, and the Fatimiyun and the Zainabiyun were coming in. So a lot of money was going to that. And then 2020, Hezbollah became the Quds force, and the expenditure simply changed, in addition to sanctions on Iran and stretching this budget, etc. So they stopped gradually throughout these phases. It's basically they started to shrink their budget in terms of catering for the Shia community, whereby they started catering for a smaller part of the Shia community, the supporters, and then the members, and then the soldiers, and now barely anyone, because this pillar is shaking. This the tripod of pillars of powers is shaking drastically now, because they can't provide services, they can't provide jobs, they cannot provide reconstruction, they cannot provide compensation, and the Shia empowerment is shattered. The whole idea of Shia empowerment has been shattered among the million displaced in the streets of Lebanon. They don't feel empowered at all. And the whole link with the Iranian regime also is in question today, because they realize that the Iranians do not care about them. When Hassan Nasrallah was killed, Iran did nothing.
He was one of the leaders of Hezbollah.
Hassan Nasrallah was the main leader. He was the leader, Hezbollah, to an extent, actually. I wrote a succession paper about him before he was killed, and everything is there, and it was translated exactly as is. It's basically, he was Hezbollah. He made it. He did that to himself. He linked Hezbollah to himself in a way that it was very difficult for Hezbollah to stay as it is after him. So they are now, for the Shia community, a lot of this has changed. The services have stopped. The construction is not happening. The compensation is not happening. They have to pay now. And they have to pay to an entity that they don't understand anymore, that has started war in Lebanon to protect Iran, not to protect the Shia or Lebanon. And a lot of people never bought into this. They really thought that Iran is helping them. They really thought that Iran is actually their father figure. They thought that Nasrallah and Iran is the father figure who is here to actually provide for them, protect them, and all they have to do is, be loyal. That's it. They came to them. Hassan Nasrallah told the Shia that I'm your father figure. I am the one who is going to provide for you, protect you, liberate you, etc. Wherever you need, you come to me. All I need for you is loyalty. And this worked for decades. However, today they realize that their father figure is dead. They're orphans, and those who are taking care of them today, they're like godfathers, the Iranians, are not actually treating them the same way. They are dragging them again and again and again into a war without any compensation. So now the price is so high. It's not just about loyalty, and they don't have a father. They don't have anyone to protect them anymore or provide for them. So the whole equation that worked for 40 years has been shattered by the two wars that we saw.
Can you talk about Hezbollah's role in major international terrorism? I think a lot of younger people probably don't remember, but before Al-Qaeda, some of the most spectacular acts of international terrorism were tied to Hezbollah, whether it was the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, the bombing of the U.S. Marine Corps barracks in Lebanon in 1983, the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires in 1993. I mean, these radically shifted what people thought of as international terrorism because, like you said, it involved suicide bombers. But was this a shock to Southern Lebanese that this organization, I mean, maybe they tried to disguise it, but such spectacular acts of violence, it really shifted how terrorism was used as a tool for geopolitics?
Well, this did a number of, ripple effects. It's in Lebanon, inside Lebanon, it showed everybody how strong Hezbollah is. For the Shia per se, it worked actually because it showed how Hezbollah can actually, for some Shia that was too violent. A lot of people did not really buy in it.
There must have been some revulsion about it.
Yes, of course. But I'm saying for those who were already both, who were already loyal, they felt that empowerment. Those who were not really loyal were like, ooh. Remember, back then, Hezbollah was not in its peak. A lot of people were not pro Hezbollah. Not, people within the Shia were divided. The peak was really in 2000 when everybody was like, oh, Hezbollah is actually serious about it because they actually went back to their land and they did it. So, so back then, the Shia community was still very, very divided. The Amal Hezbollah, alliance was either not there or it wasn't really strong enough. So a lot of Amal people were against it. Also, the Lebanese, of course, the other Lebanese were like, this is beyond our understanding. This is too much. So yes, but it proved, whether you like it or not, it showed that Hezbollah has the capacity to do this. Not for the Lebanese, for the international community, for everyone in the world. They graduated in their perception, and people's perception, from a local resistance group to an international terror organization. And as this is huge, but this is what Hezbollah wanted. They wanted to show everyone that that's their power. So Iran, basically, the Iranian regime, wanted to use Hezbollah and show the world how powerful they are. That's the message. That's the whole idea. Whether they're designated, whether they are now have a problem with the international community, they never cared about that. They are Iranian, and whatever Iran wanted to show the world, they used Hezbollah. And this is what the Iranians wanted to show the world, like, finally, we are on the map. That's exactly what happened. And it took a while for people to actually understand that how organic Hezbollah is within the Iranian regime. But I don't think that's a big question today.
Hanin, I want to expand on that a little bit because I don't think that this is actually well understood or appreciated by people around the world. We know that there are Hezbollah cells and individuals abroad, including several who've been arrested in the United States in the past and who've tried to enter the United States through the southern border. One critical one that Jay Solomon did a huge investigation on is the would-be assassin of Salman Rushdie.
In New York.
Yeah. We all know Hadi Matar, who appeared at this festival where Salman was giving a talk and stabbed him.
He was in it.
Sorry?
It was vicious. It was like 20 times.
Yeah. Salman Rushdie obviously survived, lost his eye, I believe, though, in the process. He was initially described as a lone wolf. That's how the media described him. And then Jay did an investigation and found that he was actually a Hezbollah operative.
Yeah.
And in fact,
wonderful work.
Yeah. And thankfully now he's been charged with providing material support for Hezbollah. And so I want to talk about that a little bit for a few reasons. One, how big is that threat? I mean, are there more guys like that here? And do you think, to bring it to today, is this something that Iran could activate? Activate Hezbollah overseas, given what's going on in the region?
That's a big question. Yes, absolutely. They have cells everywhere. We all know that. My colleagues have been following that. I know the American authorities know about this. They have cells. They have been recruiting people actively. And don't forget also the other guy who actually drove into the synagogue in Michigan the other day. So he's also, has family in Hezbollah. There's, even if they act, because individually, they're all part of something. There's like, when it comes to Hezbollah per se, it's very hard for me to see lone wolves, right? They are all connected one way or another, even if not materially and practically, ideologically, they are. Like, they recruit people even inside the US. There are people who are recruiting Hezbollah on a daily basis. They haven't been really activated in that sense, except for these different individuals. And they can activate them, yes, and that really scares me. And remember when the Iranians also went after Masih Alinejad, they actually sent someone to kidnap her, and another time.
She's the Iranian dissident in New Jersey or Brooklyn.
She's an Iranian activist, a woman activist, and she's very outspoken against the Iranian regime. And they did send someone to kidnap her. And these people were part of a cell inside the US, and they were arrested. Others are there, I'm sure. When will they be activated? If they will be activated, it depends on many things. But does Iran have this capacity? Yes, they do have this capacity. And the only way to get rid of these people is to make sure that the Iranian regime is no longer there, because they will use them anytime they want to. And it's not just in America, in Europe, everywhere, in the Gulf as well, in the UAE, there have been some arrests. So yes, I think to really get rid of them, to really make sure that these cells inside the United States are no longer active and no longer have access to any leadership inside Iran, is for the IRGC to be gone, for the regime basically to be gone. Otherwise, they will always have them and they will never let go of them.
Do you think Hezbollah has ever really paid a price for these operations? Because I know with like the attack on Salman Rushdie, it was like it felt like they kind of wanted to play down. They did eventually charge Hadi Matar, who was convicted, but that was kind of kept quiet. They never really said, "Wow, Hezbollah is operating inside the U.S." It felt like they wanted to keep it down.
Yes, I don't know what happened there, but Hezbollah didn't Hezbollah's never been really paying a price. Like, they always manage to navigate these things. They managed to navigate sanctions because they always depended on Iran oil sales. If Iran's oil sales are jeopardized, then Hezbollah will get no money. They managed to navigate these operations because at the end of the day, their operations, their channels of money, their channels of, there are certain things that harm them. Obviously, Venezuela, this is something that will or is hurting them.
They won't be getting revenue from
Yes, Venezuela. That's a big deal. So it's really about Iran oil sales, their allies, etc. But eventually they navigate it. So today, if Iran survives this war, and the IRGC survives this war between the US and Iran, and eventually Quds Force, that is Hezbollah, survive this war, and they manage to continue selling their oil, then Hezbollah will continue getting money to rebuild, regenerate, and do more of these operations. The only way for them to pay for all this actually is not for these guys to go to jail, because these guys who actually hold the gun and do the deed are small operatives that really are dispensable for Hezbollah. They don't care about them. Even if they go and say, yes, Hezbollah told me to do this, what do they care, right? These people are dispensable. These guys think that they are doing the great job of, the resistance. But at the end of the day, they're very dispensable people for Hezbollah. They've been dispensing these people to the south of Lebanon, to fight the Israeli forces without any protection. So they don't care about these people. The only way for them to actually pay the price is to go after them directly. Not, whatever happens anywhere in the world where a Hezbollah operative is implicated, then Hezbollah itself has to pay the price. Today, Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese government. Today, Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese system in terms of security organizations. Their allies are thriving. And no one is doing anything. There was no policy to pressure Lebanon to stop this. And this is what really hurts Hezbollah, to get Lebanon to remove Hezbollah from the system, to remove Hezbollah's allies from the system. That's what hurts them. Otherwise, they don't care.
Hanin, I want to bring that then to what's happening today. And you already highlighted a little bit about it earlier in your talk when you were talking about what's hurting them now and the fact that they're losing popular support among the Shia, right? They're not getting compensated and so on. Let's expand a little bit about that, because I want to see the threat level that you think Hezbollah poses right now, given the latest escalation in Lebanon. Do you think, and we've talked about it a little bit globally, but so internally in Lebanon, do you think Hezbollah could rebuild itself again? Do you believe it could just turn into a political party without arms, or is it more likely to turn? I know to turn, and I know that's hard for even for me to say. Or is it more likely to turn into just a terrorist organization with no official political presence in Lebanon? And externally, so talk about the internal, and then externally, what is the risk that Hezbollah plays spoiler in the current Israel-Lebanon peace talks?
There are two ways of really containing or eliminating Hezbollah in Lebanon. One is for the Iranian regime to go, not change, go, because what's seen today is some changes in the top, system, right? Like the IRGC, the Walid Faqih, etc. However, you need the IRGC to be gone. That's when Hezbollah is gone. That's one way of doing it. If the IRGC survives, Hezbollah will survive. Another way of doing it, let's say the IRGC survives, the Iranian regime survives, Hezbollah, we still have Hezbollah in Lebanon, very much militarily weakened. The only way to deal with this internally, actually, is to target all of Hezbollah's power foundations. I wrote about this in my last congressional testimony. I talk about how Hezbollah is actually an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem of military, financial, and political power. So their military power has been degraded in the first war. It will be degraded today, and it will be degraded again and again. However, as long as they have the financial power and the political power, that is like their access to the government, their allies in the government, they will always be able to rebuild and regenerate. The only way to do it is to make sure that Hezbollah is one very much degraded, then disarm Hezbollah, completely disarm Hezbollah. But then to make sure that Hezbollah cannot rebuild and regenerate, even if they have zero weapons today, they will still be able to regenerate. To make sure that they don't, you have to target their political and financial systems in order to make sure that they do not have access to smuggle, avoid customs, have access to the port or the Tripoli port, and basically to the financial institutions inside Lebanon, which is basically, honestly, it's mostly controlled by Hezbollah, because Hezbollah has been debanked in 2019. The only bank that is still working is Al-Qard al-Hassan, and there are a number of cash companies in Lebanon that are helping Hezbollah bring in money, cash to Lebanon, without having actual banks in Lebanon that can be monitored and that can be coordinated with. Then the cash economy that is taking over is going to be benefiting Hezbollah. They are the kings of cash. That's their economy. And as long as Lebanon has no banks but cash, that's Hezbollah will thrive. The government doesn't want to disarm Hezbollah, but also doesn't want to target this issue. And they also do not want to target the issue of political positions and appointments within the government. Why do we still have Hezbollah ministers in the cabinet? Why do we still have Hezbollah's allies, Berri and co, also in the cabinet and in certain financial positions? That is something that the government does not have any excuse to say we cannot do it. They do not want to disarm, but they can do this. So this is something that where the US can actually come in with a very clear strategy saying, disarming Hezbollah is important and this is what's going to happen, but it's also very important to look at all other two foundations and work on them, because no one is going to do anything without that. So this is about, how to internally, how to make sure that Hezbollah is contained. The second question was about, the peace. Hezbollah will do everything they can in order to jeopardize the peace, but we all know that. And the process,
including assassinations.
But it's becoming very difficult for them now to do anything because they're in the middle. Like the Israeli drones are following each one of them. So not because there's accountability in Lebanon. There's still no accountability in Lebanon. I'm not counting on that yet. But because like there are drones above them, so organizing these operations, it requires communications. Their communications is also infiltrated. So it's not easy for them to also organize such kind of assassinations that requires one, a communication that is not infiltrated by the Israelis, and two, movement that is not monitored by the Israeli drones as well. But they will try their best to hamper it, definitely. They will try to organize, stir violence in the streets. They've tried a couple of times actually. Birri is key here. He needs to understand that he cannot be part of it. And if he's not part of it, for Hezbollah, it's also more difficult for them to be at the front and in the streets without Berri. So that's also going to be a message that needs to be clearly conveyed to him, that just sit this one out and just wait until this is over. He needs them for elections. He needs them for politics. He needs them for financial purposes. He benefits from their channels, but he also needs to understand simply that the risks outweigh the benefits. And this is the main strategy that the US should have with Berri, that the risks outweigh the benefits. And honestly, there are other benefits. And this is what he cares about.
Where are we 2, 3, 4 years with Hezbollah? Do you think they survive this, both the assault on their main patron in Tehran and this diplomatic overture that seems to be gaining some traction? Do you think they're able to survive this, or are we going to see the end of what's been sort of this, as you described very eloquently, this kind of dark period in Lebanon?
Well, it depends. Honestly, it can go both ways. I think that if there is a policy, Lebanon policy in the US, that really encompasses not just the arms, but also the cash economy and the political appointments and Hezbollah's positions within the government, really target everything and their allies, making sure that Hezbollah not only loses its arms, but its access and capability to rebuild. Because that's key. Because even if the Lebanese government itself disarms Hezbollah tomorrow, they still have the capacity and the access to rebuild. That's key. So if there is a policy that really targets the whole ecosystem, it doesn't matter what happens in Iran. They will not be able to access this. But if the focus is only on disarmament and it works, and the Iranian regime kind of survives this, then Hezbollah will be able to rebuild and regenerate, because it will still have its political and financial foundations intact. And then we will go back into another vicious circle of rebuilding conflict. This is key to really have a sustainable solution for Hezbollah.
Right. And this includes their illicit businesses, whether it's drugs
Absolutely. I have it all in my testimony. Hagar worked very, very hard on this as well. I know that she has publications and some work on that. Some of my colleagues worked on this. It's all on the website. We have done a lot of work on this, and the recommendations are there. It's out there. All you have to do is just make sure that Lebanon policy integrates all of this, not just the arms.
Mm-hmm. Don't get at every seed that allows it to grow. No.
Exactly. And that's how you maintain and protect peace. Because once you know that Hezbollah is no longer a danger in Lebanon, it will not really rebuild its weapons to jeopardize peace, then you will be able to actually implement peace in Lebanon. Because signing peace is one thing and implementing it is another story, right? So we're not only doing this to make sure that the war with Israel is no longer will not happen. We only want to do this to make sure that peace can be implemented in Lebanon. And then that would be a permanent solution. Otherwise, it would be just like patching up certain issues and waiting for the next war.
Hanin, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
I had so much fun. I love talking to you guys.
I know we love, talking is our favorite activity over here. Before you go, can you please let us know, let the listeners know, where can they find you? Where can they find where can they find your writings? And we will make sure to link to your book and testimony as well in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. Most of my writings, actually, all of my writings in the past 10 years are on the website of the Washington Institute, washingtoninstitute.org. So you can find it there under Lebanon or under my page. Each scholar has their own page, and my colleagues also do a great job. So you can just go around and have fun. So yeah, it's all there. I'm also on X, formerly Twitter, where I post my articles, but also sometimes quick comments on everything that is happening. If I don't want to wait until I write an article, I'll just put some bullet points there.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.